Folks, I love when it's the NFL season. Why? Because we get to bring in a member of the media from the opposing team. And who better to bring than the Athletics, Alec Lewis? He covers all things Minnesota Vikings. And we had to have him on the show. So, Alec, thank you so much for jumping on. And how's the weather in Minnesota as of right now?
Yeah, it hasn't gotten cold yet, but we're waiting for it. I mean, you see me in a hoodie right now, so I'm prepared. I'm loaded up. It will get cold from October to April, and that's just how it goes. But I appreciate you having me. It's been a wild start to this season, as it I'm sure always is for most parties involved. But it's been fun. I'm looking forward to this game. I mean, I as you guys know, it is a must-have, I think, for both sides at 0-2. So it's fun. I love analyzing these two teams. They're similar and different in some different ways, and so it'll be fun to talk about. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no, it's like the Spider-Man meme, where they're looking at each other and pointing at each other. That's what this game really feels like. But like you said, they're different. But let me ask you right off the bat, why are the Vikings 0-2 so far? I mean, they played against Tampa Bay. That felt like an anomaly. They turned the ball over numerous. I think they had like 4 fumbles in that game or something like that, and then they lose. No, they had 4 fumbles in the Eagles game. They had a couple of turnovers in the Bucks game. But why are they 0-2 to start the season?
Yeah, they're -6 in the turnover margin through 2 games, and when you do that, you're just not going to win a lot of football games. Like I looked last year. This was after the Tampa loss in Week 1. I looked last year. Teams that were -3 in the turnover margin in one game were like 1-37 last year. So when you do that again, you just don't win football games, and that continued in Week 2 in Philadelphia at Lincoln Financial Field against that Eagles team that was in the Super Bowl last year. So if you're going to try to beat that team on the road, even with some of the injuries that they had, you can't turn the ball over. And it was a fumble on a punt return. It was an Alexander Madison fumble on first down. It was Kirk Cousins getting sacked from the blind side and fumbling the football. And so it's funny because fans and even media member, you're analyzing, how can they fix this issue? Can they do different drills? Kevin O'Connell said that they're going to make it a priority all week. But the reality is, I mean, these are professional football players. Holding on to the football is kind of the name of the game. So I think that is the reason they are 0-2. I think there have been some positives. There have been some negatives, and we can get into both of those in terms of other elements of why they haven't kind of run away with these games. But turnovers are the most indicative stat to winning football games. You can talk to any analyst, any analytics staffer, and they will tell you that. And so when you're -6 through 2 weeks, it's going to be a rough go.
No, Alec, you're preaching to the choir. The Chargers are the first team, I think, since the merger to score 50 points in the first 2 games of the season, have 0 turnovers, and be 0-2. So when those stats come out, I mean, I'm telling you that is wild. Like, Justin Herbert is taking care of the football, running backs have taken care of the football, but they just not materialize. So that's why we say, like, these two teams are very, very similar. But when you look at it, I mean, Minnesota just hasn't been able to run the football. Alex Madison has 62 yards. Kirk has thrown in 7 on his own. So they have 69 rushing yards in 2 weeks. For maybe some Charger fans and NFL fans who aren't really familiar with Minnesota, has this been kind of a trend since Kevin O'Connell took over in Minnesota?
Yeah, without question. And last year, the Vikings had Dalvin Cook as their running back. Dalvin, everybody knows he'd been really successful here. The fans in Minnesota loved him as a player. But last year, I would say he was more explosive than efficient. And so as the year progressed, they had a lot of negative runs. This is last year I'm talking about. A lot of negative runs, a lot of carries for 0 yards. And so this entire offseason, a lot of what they did offensively and how they thought about taking this offense forward was geared toward how can we be more efficient running the football. To do that without Dalvin Cook and with Alexander Madison, excuse me, was always an interesting question. But the Vikings kind of prioritize signing a guy in tight end Josh Oliver from Baltimore. He's a big tight end. They extended fullback CJ Ham. They designed some of their run schemes to be more gap oriented, and I think they thought all of that would kind of help to be more efficient in the run game, so that you wouldn't put Kirk Cousins in positions to drop back on 3rd and long and have to find guys down the field. Now, again, through 2 weeks, it's been the same thing as last year. Very few efficient runs. I think they have faced 2 really good fronts, and that has to be pointed out. I mean, Tampa's front with Vita Vea is really tough. The Eagles' front is maybe the best in the league with Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis and those guys. So that's contributed to it. But regardless, if you're not running the ball efficiently against the best teams, then what does it really matter? But it has been a priority all offseason. It remains a priority after 2 weeks. And I imagine the rest of this week we're going to hear a lot about it from Kevin O'Connell and the players. We have to run the ball more efficiently. And the ways they attempt to do that, it's going to be fascinating to watch come Sunday.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I read your piece on Kirk Cousins. Wow. That just it's funny. You guys need to go check this out on Alec Lewis's. He has it pinned on his Twitter or X or whatever the hell you want to call it nowadays. But it is such a, like, you like that isn't just like a mantra. It's kind of pent up from everything that Kirk has experienced, from a C- that he got when he was in elementary school to the beatings that he took at Michigan State. Can you just talk about that? What was that like to sit down with him and talk about that and putting that story together? I mean, like I said, you like that is just pent up from everything that Kirk Cousins has done and everything that he's had to go through to get to this point. I mean, he's not one of these guys that was a 5-star quarterback, went on to be the first pick in the draft. No, he had to fight his way to be to where he's at today. But can you talk about that?
Yeah, first, I appreciate you reading it and mentioning it and the comprehension of the story, and your takeaway is kind of what I experienced just kind of diving into it. I mean, I'll tell you, I started covering the Vikings right before last season. And so my impression of Kirk and Kirk Cousins in general was what the masses think of Kirk Cousins, the primetime stuff, the nerdy, you like that thing. Like, that was what I thought. And then I watched
the chains on the plane.
Right. The Kirko chains. But I watched them every day, and I was like, you know what? This is kind of fascinating. And then this summer, he was on a podcast, Bussin' with the Boys podcast, and he said something that really struck me. He said, I want my kids to love something the way I love football, but I don't want whatever they love to torment them the way football has tormented me. And I heard that quote. I wrote it down because I'm kind of insane. I started to say, I want to know what he means by that, what that looks like. And I ended up calling probably 25 people who are really close to him, Mike Shanahan, a ton of people who have been around him throughout his background. And it kind of sent me on an odyssey to try to dig deep with Kirk. And we ended up sitting down twice for, I think, like 45 minutes to an hour each. And he was just so human, so open, so willing to kind of, I think, just explain what he's put himself through to try to be as good as he can be. And by the end of it, as I sat in front of a Google Doc of 70 pages of transcription and notes, I said to myself, like, if you can't appreciate what he has put himself through, no matter how you think about where he lies and the quarterback tiers and all this stuff, if you can't appreciate it, then I think it's kind of that would be tough. And so it was a story that, like, this is why that type of story is why I do the job. It's why I got into this in the first place. And his openness and willingness to share made the whole story. But it was a blast. And I'll say this, just related to the game Sunday, like, through 2 weeks, Kirk has been incredible. I mean, he really has. The 2 fumbles on sacks, one was a blitz pickup that didn't happen. The other one was, again, a blindside, just easy win on the outside that got to him. But, I mean, in terms of finding Justin Jefferson down the field and finding other guys, distributing the football, he's been really, really good. They've been without 2 of their key offensive linemen for a lot of these games. So it's been cool, I think, just to watch him. And with the background of knowing what he's been through. And I think that's a lot of these guys and the human beings they are, the more perspective you have, I think it makes it more interesting to watch them and see how they react to certain things.
I completely agree. And like I said, it's a fantastic story. I think everybody should check it out. You know what's funny? I mean, I keep on hearing like, the Vikings are starting to look elsewhere to maybe find a quarterback. They're going to look at the draft. They're doing this. They're doing their research because I think Kirk's contract is up after this year. But
Correct.
I mean, and I understand all the stuff on primetime games and all that, but he's not a bad quarterback. And I think people need to, especially, I don't know how Vikings fans are, but you don't know how good you have it until you have to go through the lumps and look at the Jets. And I'm not trying to laugh, but the Jets are still looking for a replacement for Joe Namath. Like, that's how bad this is all. Like, it's not guaranteed that you're going to find a quarterback. And I feel like Kirk, especially after reading your story, I feel like Kirk is actually, like you said, like you have to look, and that's why it takes certain journalists to like be able to look beyond all the narratives that everybody paints. And I feel like that's why beat reporters have a better sense than national people, because you're in there, you watch, you see what these people do. Not to go on a tangent or anything, but I'm just saying, like, I think everybody, like the Vikings fans, shouldn't want to lose what they have, especially because they're saying, oh, he might go to San Francisco, he might go here, he might go there. It's like, you don't want to lose that, especially with the way he's been playing, and he's on the same page with Addison and with Jefferson. I mean, I wouldn't want to lose that if I was a Vikings fan.
Yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating team building question right now because you have TJ Hawkinson, you just extended for a lot of money. You're going to have Justin Jefferson potentially the biggest contract that's not paid for a quarterback. And so,
Jamar Chase is going to be like, all right, you got that much.
and I mean, I just got to be honest. Justin Jefferson deserves more than Jamar Chase for what he means.
100% agree.
This present offense, but the Kirk Cousins situation is difficult because for what you have to allocate to a guy like him because of what he deserves. I mean, Daniel Jones just got $40 million, and the difference between production between those two guys is as wide of a gap as you'll see.
Can I blow your mind right now? Can I blow your mind?
Sure.
Do you know that Nick Chubb in his career has made what Danny Dimes is going to make this season?
It's wild. It is
crazy, but I just killed your train of thought, and I apologize for that.
No. I've still got it. But Kirk Cousins, I mean, with this team, what they've tried to do is really turn over their roster building structure. And so as they look ahead, and I think as most teams in the NFL realize, you can build a roster much more easily with a rookie quarterback than a guy you're paying a lot of money. Now, how do you juxtapose that with the reality that Kirk Cousins is going to give you everything he's got? He's going to be prepared. He's going to be accurate. He's going to distribute the ball down the field. He's going to deal with pressure. It's a really tough roster decision. And right now it looks like both sides are going to ride it out. Kirk's going to hit free agency, and I guarantee you there will be suitors for him, which will drive the price up for the Vikings. So there's a lot to that makes it a very fascinating discussion and conversation and decision for the Vikings. And I mean, again, with the way he's played, even though he is as old as he is, he has shown that he is willing and he wants to play for a long time. He's this year before the season, he brought in a full-time body guy to work with his arm and his body. Like, he wants to extend his career and be as effective as he can in the long term. So we'll see kind of how it shakes out. But it presents a very difficult challenge for the Vikings that remains up in the air and is looming over everything that happens on a weekly basis this season.
Were you surprised that two-parter. Were you surprised that Justin Jefferson and the Vikings weren't able to come to an agreement? 1, 2, how does your gritty?
Yes, I was surprised. I kind of thought it was trending that way. And then I don't know, it was an interesting week. I know Nick Bosa got extended that week for a lot. It was just an interesting thing. And then to not see it happen was surprising for him. My gritty, it needs a lot of work. Justin and I haven't gotten to it. I've seen the new gritty there's a jet gritty. There's some new stuff. I definitely can't incorporate that yet. But I mean, this guy is unbelievable. Yeah. Chargers fans, I'm sure we'll see it Sunday. I mean, these teams, it's funny. Like you see the numbers, you're like, man, yeah, that guy's pretty good. 9 catches, 150 yards. What you don't see is that he's doubled on almost every route he runs, and he's still able to beat. I mean, I talked to one of his longtime private kind of guys that he's worked with, is the guy Jerry Sullivan, who used to be a receivers coach in the NFL for a long time. And Jerry comes up here to work with Justin before every single season and has since Justin entered the NFL. And Jerry was talking to me. It's like, we figured we've done some certain drills to be able to beat double team. Like he knows where coverage is coming from and how he's going to set up guys, and he can do it. And he's done it through 2 weeks. And I mean, I don't really know. 150 yards for Justin has kind of just because it's like just is what it is, which is absurd. Like, and I realize it, but you almost get used to the fact that this guy is kind of uncoverable.
Yeah, no, the guy is literally ridiculous. But 2 more quick questions. We're joined by the Athletics, Alec Lewis. Make sure you guys follow him. He covers the Vikings. What has Jordan Addison brought to this offense?
Yeah, he's brought a lot, because with how much coverage that Justin Jefferson gets and how much double coverage he gets, it leaves one-on-one matchups elsewhere. And that's for TJ Hockenson at tight end. And last year it was Adam Thielen, who Adam has gotten older. He navigated injuries last year. He didn't separate very well. The numbers kind of bear that out. And the Vikings said, look, if we're going to get one-on-one coverage for guys who aren't Justin Jefferson, let's get guys who can separate really effectively. And Jordan Addison has been that guy. They've schemed up some ways to get him a couple deep balls down the field for 2 deep touchdowns through the first 2 weeks. But just on a down-to-down basis, his ability to separate, and then his ability to be in sync with Kirk Cousins and an offense that is pretty complex has been really impressive. And I think the reality is it's just kind of the tip of the iceberg for what he's going to accomplish this year. I mean, I think TJ Hockenson is essentially the number 2 target, and Kirk has a level of trust in TJ that is pretty impressive. But Addison has given this offense in this passing game specifically another dimension that I think was an extremely targeted attempt by Kevin O'Connell and this Viking staff to kind of just give them more answers offensively.
Yeah, no, and it's funny being in LA and everything. I got to meet Jordan a couple of times last season, and he's like, "Where do you think I'm going to go?" I'm like, "Well, you're going to want to go somewhere where they have a good quarterback." And he's like, "Yeah, you're right." He's like, I do, especially so they can get me the ball. So not a bad trade-off for him to be in Minnesota. But last one for me, just kind of a 2-parter, but Daniel Hunter, 4 sacks so far to start the season. The guy has been playing out of his mind. Can you just talk about him and this defense and what Charger fans should expect from it?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. Last year, Ed Donatel was a defensive coordinator, and he was he actually worked with Brandon Staley. He's a very just a Fangio heavy quarters guy, quarter half, cover 2, like that he based out of that stuff. They played with a lot of light boxes, and it was a very passive defense. Like they were going to take punches over and over and over, and you were going to try to beat them down the field. This year, you bring in Brian Flores, who is he is the puncher. He is Canelo. He is coming at you with aggression, and I think his ability to scheme pressure has helped guys like Daniil find the quarterback. I mean, it's funny because Daniil's win rates and pressure rates are pretty similar to last year, but I think the ability of Brian Flores to think of ways to be able to attack protections has translated into sacks in a way that last year it did not. So Brian Flores is he's aggressive. He's going to throw curveballs at you. I think this secondary is it's interesting. The cornerbacks are pretty young. The safeties is a pretty stout group. But in general, I think this defense is so much more creative than it was last year. And I think if it can get Justin Herbert and this Chargers offensive line in situations that have to drop back and throw the football, it could be a long day for them, even with the skill players they have.
Well, this weekend, Chargers versus Vikings, both are 0-2. Something's got to give this weekend, but it'll definitely be a good one. Again, check out Alec Lewis's Twitter. He's at Alec_Lewis. Make sure you guys check it out. Check out the stories because he's going to be bringing it all week. Alec, thank you so much for jumping on.
No, of course. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Looking forward to the game and seeing my guy Daniel Popper when he gets here. But no, I appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Always fun to catch up with guys around the league. It's part of what makes this thing so fun. I mean, we all, like you said earlier, I think all of us care so deeply about getting as close to these teams as we can. And I don't know how much the people on the outside really care, but I know we all put in a lot of work for it. So respect to what you do, and appreciate you having me.
Same here. 100%.